All right, today we're in the car driving and we're like, hey, let's go to Pensacola, look around. And I did a video about Milton and, let's take a tour of Milton. Well, I guess I'll call this video the tour of Pensacola and the way I remember it, and just tell some stories and just kind of introduce you to Pensacola. A lot of people say, what's Pensacola like? Well, it's home. It's nothing fancy though. It's it is the oldest city in America. Now, people in St. Augustine say, no, we're the oldest city in America. Well, the oldest standing city in America, yes. But Pensacola was founded before St. Augustine as a little colony. Then it was wiped out completely by a hurricane. Then they built St. Augustine. So St. Augustine says, we're the oldest city in America. Well, you're the oldest standing city, yes. But really, Pensacola was founded first. So older usually means poorer. So we have a joke that if an atom bomb went off in Pensacola, it'd do about $10 worth of damage. Because Pensacola is kind of an old city. And I'm going to show you Pensacola today, give you a little bit of tour. When I was born in Milton. We're actually driving through Pace right now, heading to Pensacola. But I was born back in Milton. And but for the first 2 years of my life, I grew up in a little house over in Pensacola, and my parents lived there. So I'm showing my daughter all these things. She's asking Daddy all these questions. Daddy, where were you born? Where did you live? And all these things. So I figured I'd share that on YouTube as well. So the first place we're going is the house that I lived in when I was 2. There's Gulf Power, the power company. And we're driving along right now in Santa Rosa County. And over there is I-10. We live on the other side over there, down that way. But all that is the bay. And the Spaniards named that bay La Bahía de Santa María de Galvez. Say that 3 times fast. La Bahía de Santa María de Galvez. But today it's called Escambia Bay. Much easier to say. From the Escambia Indians. This is the Escambia River that comes up here. And my dad used to come out here fishing sometimes. It's a really good place to catch some redfish and things. And we're heading over to Pensacola. Now, off in the distance, Emma, I don't know if you can get that, if you can zoom in, but that's the University of West Florida. Now, my mom and dad got divorced in 1998, and I was 14 years old. I just finished middle school, and I had to go to high school in Oklahoma, 4 years, Cushing High School. And when I graduated, my greatest desire was to move back home to Florida. And I enrolled in the University of West Florida, and I went there for 1 year. And it was terrible. I mean, just wickedness, just open wickedness everywhere. Just sin galore right in your face. I just thought, this is horrible. And I wanted to be an oceanographer or a marine biologist, and that's what I was going for. But Dad said, oh, you'll never do any good in that, and he wanted me to be a CPA, certified public accountant. And I went 1 year there, and then I realized, that's not what I want. I don't want to be in the world. The world is wicked. And my dad told me, well, there's Pensacola Bible Institute. And I said, that's more like it. I'm a Christian. I'm saved now. My dad led me to the Lord. I don't want to be around that kind of worldly stuff. So I went to the Pensacola Bible Institute. Of course, I took a year off first, but in between there. And I went to the Pensacola Bible Institute. And I graduated there. And I didn't have to take English class because I had a whole year of English at the University of West Florida. So I had the Fridays off. And I didn't have to go to school on Friday at PBI. But this is, look here, Escambia River, Escambia County. So we're now getting into Escambia County, into the county of Pensacola. And over on the right, Emma, when we get up here, there was a hurricane a while back that went through here, and it deposited 2 boats in the swamp. And after that happens, why, they have a grace period where someone's supposed to go out and get their boats. Well, those 2 boats, nobody ever claimed. And so they said, okay, those are part of the landscape. From now on, it's illegal to go out and touch those boats. Those are part of the prairie preserve or whatever. And so if you go out there and try to get those boats, well, they'd put you in jail. So that's where I always like seeing those boats. That's a shame because those are such beautiful boats. They're probably super expensive. And so coming up here on the right is the entrance to the University of West Florida, where I went for a whole year. And we still have people that go out there and preach and pass out tracts. I used to do that too while I was in school there. once or twice. I preached on the street, passed out tracts. And there's a beautiful place behind the college that it's this walkway out over the swamp. And you can just walk on top of this nice walkway way out in the swamp. And there's a place you look down and you see an alligator. And they had a nickname for that gator. I forget what they called it. It was only about 3 or 4 foot long. But it was always there every time I went and looked at it. But now, we went there a couple years ago and walked around, couldn't find the gator. We sure saw a lot of big mullet in there. This is kind of neat. This guy owns this house here on the right. And from time to time, he'll have a garage sale. This white house right here. And he has the biggest knife collection. And boy, I love stopping there for garage sales and seeing all the knives he has for sale and such. So we're getting into Pensacola, and the first thing I want to do is go by where my mom and dad lived when I was born. They drove to Milton, and I was born there. And I guess if you watch the video about Milton, you'll see the hospital where I was born. But then they took me back here, and we're going to go by what used to be University Mall, and it's not there anymore. But we used to live kind of behind University Mall, so we'll go there. And okay, there's the bread store. Check that out. We would come over here probably twice a week when my grandpa was alive, and they would sell day-old bread, a big black bag, garbage bag full of day-old bread for like $1. And we would buy 5, 6 of those bags, and we'd take it back home. And where we live now, we used to feed the animals. And we have foxes, we have raccoons, we have squirrels, we have lots of animals that come out. And every night, my grandpa would throw out bread. And I'd do it too. They'd tell me to go do it. I'd go downstairs, throw out the bread. There was one time we counted like 8 foxes. And there were a bunch of times we counted like 15 raccoons. I mean, there were so many. The raccoons and the foxes would come eat the bread. And I had a couple of raccoons that got really close to me, and they started to get less timid, and they'd come closer. And so we bought some cat food, and they would come right up next to me and eat the cat food right next to me. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to see if they'll eat it out of my hand. Well, my grandmother says you shouldn't do that. I did that once, and he bit me. And he won't bite me. But I did it, and they would come, and I would pet them, and they didn't like it at first. But after several days, finally, they let me pet them while they're eating out of my hand. And, raccoons are so mean. They just, and they're grumpy, and they grunt, and they growl. They're just the meanest little creatures. And they'd eat out of my hand, and sure enough, one time he bit me, and I go, ow! And he jumped like this and ran away. And I said, yep, that's it. I'm not feeding any more raccoons, not any more wild raccoons. One of them that came, though, I called him Peg Leg Pete, and he had no hand. And sure enough, that had to have been, probably an alligator that bit his hand off. I mean, what else could it have been? They say they'll bite their own hand off if they get in a trap. So maybe he could have gotten in a trap and he ate off his hand to get out. But where we live and out in the swamp and everything, I bet his probably hand was bitten off by an alligator. And he was a big old one. He was the biggest one. And he's just missing that leg, and he'd walk like this. I guess you could say he was a pirate raccoon. But boy, I miss those days. We still see raccoons, right, Emma, from time to time, and we still see. We went home last night night before from church service, and we saw a fox in the yard. One time I was walking out in the woods, and there was a fox there, and he was facing the other way. And I started sneaking up on him thinking he's going to run away, and he didn't. And I kind of made some noise, and he didn't hear me. And I walked right up to him and was looking straight down at him. And then I touched him, and he turned around and he ran away. I think he might have been deaf. I don't think that was very smart. Touching wild animals that probably had a disease that made him deaf or something. But that was a lot of fun. It's just fun being a country boy and all the fun stuff you see. So here we are into I call this Pensacola. They don't really call this the Pensacola city line, but this is Pensacola. If you turn right up here, you go to my old Bible school, and I have a video on YouTube about where I went to Bible school. And while I was in Bible school for about 5 or 6 months, I rented a trailer with another man who was in school there, young man. And he was actually a famous evangelist's son. I don't know if I should mention his name. Maybe you've heard of Sam Gipp. I think Sam Gipp's a great Bible teacher, and I've listened to him preach a lot of times. And I think now he's the dean of a Bible school. Well, his son and I, we rented a trailer together, and I moved out of the dad's house and lived there for a little while, but it was just easier living at dad's house and not having to pay my half of the rent. But yeah, we're in Pensacola, and I'm just going to tell you some stories and show you Pensacola. There's Olive Baptist Church over there, and Old Olive Baptist Church is a Southern Baptist, and they're not King James only. One time when I was in Bible school, we go out on Thursdays and we knock on doors, invite people to church. So my friend Mark and I, we were going together as partners, and we did a couple door knockings. Then we came back, we saw a sign at this Southern Baptist, Olive Baptist Church, concert for kids, come for the concert. And so we're like, let's go see what that is. We've got, 30 minutes or so before we have to be in class. And so we go in and we get inside, and all the lights are down, and it's this concert for teenagers. And these girls come in with just the short skirts or shorts, didn't have hardly any clothes on, and the lights were down, and they're jamming with rock and roll music. And this is supposed to be a Baptist church. And we sit down and we go, what is this? And I look over at him, and he looks at me, and he goes, this isn't Christian. This is just like the world. And we just kind of stare at it, and we're just like, this is awful. And then my friend looks at me and goes, I want a beer. I go, what? We're Bible students. You shouldn't say that. He goes, no, this is the kind of stuff I was in before I was saved. The lights are down. People are jamming in rock and roll, half-dressed people. He goes, this makes me want a beer. So let's get out of here. So we did, and we walked out, and there was a shelf with all these different versions of the Bible. And we just took out gospel tracts and put in each one of those Bibles a gospel tract, because they're not King James only. Then we went upstairs on an elevator, and we found this big, huge conference room. And there was a whiteboard, and we started writing, King James only, you need to use only the King James, because only the King James is the Word of God. And we put a couple scriptures up. It was fun. So I guess you could say we desecrated that church or whatever. And it was just kind of funny. So also right here, we are on Davis Highway and I-10. And look over there where the Shell station and the Dunkin' Donuts is. Right behind that Shell station is the best place to eat in all of Pensacola. It's called El Asador. And it's basically just a little truck. Well, they've kind of built a building now, but at one time it was just a little what they call truck, cafeteria or whatever. And they sell tacos there. And at first, we were the only ones that knew about it. We'd go there anytime we wanted, we'd get some tacos. But now I guess all of Pensacola knows. Now you got to wait in line 10-20 minutes to go eat. But that's the best place in all of Pensacola. It's on a list somewhere on the internet of the top 10 places. I think it's in America to eat. Or maybe it's the top 10 places in Florida or something. But they have the best tacos. And people say, well, what meat do you get? Well, I like to get the carne asada, which is beef. But I also like lengua. And what is lengua, Emma?
Cow tongue.
Cow tongue. And it might sound gross, but there's just something about that tongue. It's just such tender, wonderful, wonderful meat. So here we are here. And I got to get over because I don't want to get on the interstate. Come on, people. And it used to be Pensacola was a great place because there was no traffic. But now, man, Pensacola has grown because of the Pensacola Naval Base. And just people come down here, join the Navy, and it's like when they get out, they don't leave. They stay. They don't go back home for some reason. So Pensacola, if it wasn't for the Navy base at Pensacola and then Eglin on the other side and Whiting Air Force or whatever, the Pensacola would just be a little blip on the map. But because of the military, so many people have moved here. Now, coming up here on the right is where there used to be the University Mall. And Mom was here, a year or so ago. Well, there's Ruckman's Corner I showed before, where Ruckman used to preach on the street corner. But Mom told me about this up here, University Mall, and how around the time that I was born, they were building this. And there used to be a mall right there called University Mall. And Mom tells the story about how they were building it right about the time I was born. Well, several years ago, they had to tear it down because they built it on a swamp, and the whole middle of the place started sinking down into the ground. So I guess I could say I outlived University Mall. They tore it all down and turned it into a strip mall, and I guess somehow they filled in You got to watch out, Florida. Swamps and sinkholes and things like that. So I was born in Milton, but my mom and dad lived back here behind University Mall, and I'm going to take you back and show you the house where I lived in after I was born, babe, so you can see what it looks like. And isn't it kind of neat? It's on White Oak Drive, and you have to do a report for school about what?
A white oak.
A white oak, so that's kind of a neat thing too. Okay, we're getting kind of close, and right here, something interesting happened. Right on this spot right there. Okay, I have really bad ingrown toenails in my toes. And I was out on visitation with a certain young lady, and she was in a wheelchair. She was the best visitation partner because she's in a wheelchair, and every time you knock on a door, they'd be like, "Oh, what happened to you?" You know, they wouldn't slam the door on you. And I was putting my foot up on the dashboard in her car. She could drive, even though she was in a wheelchair. She had a special thing. And my toe was up there. I said, "I just got it operated on," and right there, she hit a car in front of her. And my toe went into the windshield and broke it. And that's how I got the nickname of Robert Breaker, the windshield breaker. So that's kind of a funny story. And so that was, yeah, and that hurt my toe even more. It was hurting already, that's why I put it up, and it hurt even more after it broke the windshield, but we had an accident there. All right, this is White Oak Drive, and this is the road that my parents lived in and where I grew up for the first 2 years of my life. Whoa, and there was a bump there and I didn't see it. And so I think it was 6404 White Oak Drive where we used to live, but I took Mom out here a couple years ago and she showed me the house and everything where we grew up. So it should be right up here, and let me see if I can find it. Yeah, this is where I was reared, I guess you could say, for the first 2 years of my life. Now, most people say, well, you can't remember anything before you were 2. But I do remember the inside of the house. I remember the toy that I played with. I remember in the back of the house there was kind of a step down, and that was the I guess you call it living room area or something. And we used to have, there was a young kid that used to come over and he'd play with me, and we were like 1 or 2. And a couple years ago he emailed me and said, "Hey, do you remember me? I know we were young." I go, "Actually, yeah, I actually do." This is it. So is it still 6404? I don't know. I don't see the address, but this is where my mom and dad lived. This house right here. And I don't remember anything else about it. Just the very back, that step down, and we used to play down there all the time. It's got a big oak. Look, there's a white. Is that a white oak? Some sort of oak right there in the yard. So that was where I spent the first 2 years of my life. Just a quaint little small house, isn't it? Oh, look at the azaleas right there. Aren't they beautiful? I'm actually allergic to azaleas, which is not fun. I used to have to cut them in my landscape and lawn care business, and boy, did I sneeze. And then I realized, oh, I'm allergic to azaleas. If we had stayed here and not moved out to Milton, then most likely, as I grew older, this would have been the school that I went to. Just down the road. And I've always looked at this as like, this is the ugliest school I've ever seen in my life. So I'm kind of glad that it didn't end up living in Pensacola. But look at the catamaran. See that? That's pretty cool. Yeah. Get open. Oh, more azaleas. Those are beautiful. And look at those pink ones. Man, we're in February, but for us, that's almost spring because we're down in Florida. But isn't that just an ugly school right there? I just thought that was so ugly, and so I'm so glad that I didn't go there. All right, so let's go see something else in Pensacola and see what else I can remember. But this is Pensacola, and there's magnolias, oak trees. Just, I love this. The one thing that I do like about this White Oak Road, and I'm turning back on it, is that it almost feels like a tunnel with all these oaks growing over the top. You see that? I've always liked that. And well, actually, there were a lot more. The hurricane must have taken out a lot of these, because it was like almost couldn't see the sun. There were so many. So I think that's kind of cool. All right, we'll find something else to see. So this is Langley Avenue in Pensacola, and we're actually heading south. I want to show everybody downtown and things like that. But if you were to take a left here at this light, drive all the way down, eventually you would end at the bay. And if it were possible to drive across the bay, which you can't, You go 4 miles, and our house is almost straight across. So we live that way across the bay. I doubt they'll build a bridge on Langley Avenue someday, but we have to go way around on I-10 to come over here. And really, it's just as straight as the arrow flies. We're just that way about 6-7 miles. So I always see Langley, and I just always think that, oh, house is straight that direction, just across 4 miles of water. So that's kind of funny. But Emma wants to show everybody the mall that we have now. There used to be 2 malls, University and Cordova. Well, University closed down, and they had to destroy it, so it's basically just a couple of stores, strip mall. But Cordova Mall is the big mall to come to, and yeah, I don't like the mall. It's just way overpriced stuff, crowded, lots of people. It's a clean mall, it's nice. I'm not a mall person. But it was fun that one time we went there on your birthday, wasn't it? And we did the putt-putt golf.
That was Elise.
That was Elise. And it was all glow in the dark. All the lights were off and everything was glow in the dark putt-putt. That was kind of fun. So, all right, here we go. Now, one of the cool things about Pensacola is that it's not flat. Most of Florida, when you think Florida, you think flat. Well, Pensacola has a lot of hills. Can you see all this? Lots of hills in Pensacola. And in fact, there's a place called Scenic Highway, and I don't think we'll go that way. But Scenic Highway is a big bluff that sits up about 60, 70 feet off from the bay, and it's just got a beautiful view. But here's a lot of, you can see the hills and everything. Maybe when we get to Cordova, you can see some more hills. And straight ahead of us, you can barely see through the trees, is Sacred Heart Hospital. And that's where my daddy died. And he died back in 2010. Had a blood vessel in his head burst and bled out about a quarter over his brain. And he lived for about 3 days, but it took his ability to speech, of speech, and he couldn't talk. But he could hear, he could listen, he could shake his head and know what we were saying. And I stayed there by his side for 3 days, never left his side. And then he passed away. And that's Sacred Heart, the Catholic hospital. I had no idea. I wasn't even thinking, oh, that's a Catholic hospital. And I told his sister, and she was a Catholic when Dad died. And she said, well, I'm surprised you took him to Sacred Heart Hospital. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Catholic, isn't it? I mean, when somebody's in need, the ambulance just takes them to the closest place. And that ever even entered into my mind, oh, that's a Catholic place. But it was a sad time in my life to lose my dad. But I'm glad he was saved. And he's the one, there's Sacred Heart right there. He's the one that led me to the Lord. And I preached his funeral with another man. And yeah, I'll never forget it. So that's Sacred Heart. And I've got a funny story about that too. I'll have to tell you. Don't let me forget about some of the PVI guys did there. That's a really funny story. We're gonna have to turn right up here so I can tell that story. So you can take and turn it straight ahead, and straight ahead to the right. All that is Cordova Mall, the big mall. So we're not in downtown Pensacola. We're kind of out in the outskirts, but this is the place to be. And up ahead is Pensacola State College on the left, which used to be PJC. They used to call PJC 13th grade because they said it's the easiest college in the world, PJC. But now they changed the name to Pensacola State College. If you go back that direction, you go to Pensacola Christian College. And I don't know, maybe someday I'll do a video about that. That's where Emma wants to go to school. Which you got a few more years, honey. Not that many, what? 7 more? Oh boy. But here's Cordova Mall coming up, and it's interesting. Cordova Mall is named after a man named Cordova, who was one of the Spanish explorers. There's a lot of Spanish explorers that are famous around this area. Tristan de la Luna was one of those that helped found here, and Ponce de Leon or Ponce de Leon. But here we go. Up here is Cordova Mall. Now look at what it says, Cordova. Everyone says Cordova Mall. Well, I went to Honduras and I rented the house, and my neighbors were the Cordobas. They spelled it the same way except with a B. And I said, oh, it's Cordoba. No, Cordoba. You have to put the accent on the O, so it's Cordoba. So I always wonder if in Spanish this wasn't Cordova, but we pronounce it Cordova. So we put the accent on the last O when maybe it should really be on the first O. It's just funny how things change from one language to another. There's the Sacred Heart Hospital, and Dad was up in one of those rooms on the 5th floor when he passed away on January, I can't remember, was it either the 7th or the 10th? One of those was the funeral, one of those was the day he died. So maybe it was the 7th that he passed away of 2010. Now right up here, look, there's a helicopter. But right up here where this helicopter landing pad is, notice how it's a hill that kind of goes downhill. All right. Down there's that little wall that has the, all right, see the grass down below? All right, 2 of my friends that went to PBI. One of them's passed away, Brother Santos Ortiz. He and another brother came out here one day while they were in Bible school back in the 70s. And they put a big sign right there. They bought a 4x8 piece of plywood, and they wrote in big letters, "No hope in the Pope, Roman slaves. You can't get saved through the Catholic Church." They wrote that in big letters, and they put it on a big 4x4 on both sides, posts. They dug a big deep hole and put cement, and they put that sign right there. And that sign sat there for a couple of weeks. And Brother Ortiz told me, he said, every time I drive by here, I just laugh because I think about when I did that. And that stayed there for about 2 weeks. And then he said he's driving by one day, and he says he looked over and he saw about 4 or 5 guys with their construction hats on and everything, and they were just kind of scratching their heads looking like, where did this sign come from? Who put this here? And he saw them trying to take it out, and he was just laughing that they did that. And they made it a point to put a lot of cement in there, so he really made them work to get it out. But I thought that was so funny. Now, I got to show you this. This is Olive Garden. We're not coming here to eat. But there are some hills in Pensacola, and I don't know if you can see. And the funnest thing to do in Pensacola is come to Olive Garden, drive behind Olive Garden, put your car in neutral, and just let it go. And then put your hands in the air. No. But this shows you how many hills. Look at this. You can't even see the road. It's so scary. This scares you, doesn't it? Yeah. It scares Mommy. Here we go. So there are some hills in Florida, and that's my favorite one. Right behind Olive Garden. That's always fun. And when I was younger, my dad had a health food store that he opened here. My dad did many things. My dad was in the military, in the Air Force. Dad and Mom met in the Air Force, so they were there during the time of Vietnam, but they were never sent to Vietnam. Dad was a corpsman and worked in the hospital. Mom was a nurse. After getting out, Dad, you took advantage of the military, whatever they do to help pay for your college. Dad went to the University of Houston, and he became a meteorologist. And Dad moved to Panama City and was on TV for something like 12 years as the weatherman on the local channel in Panama City. I don't remember, was it Channel 9 or something? But this was in the 70s, way before they would have recorded it. They always did it live, and they didn't keep the tapes. Well, afterwards, Dad moved here, and right up here on the right is now a pizza place. This was an old gas station, and Dad rented this, and Dad had his health food store right here. It says the Tuscan Oven Pizzeria. Look to the right. That, I remember as a 5-year-old, Dad had that as his business. Now, he had another one before that, or maybe after that. I don't remember. It was somewhere over on the other side of Pensacola, but I remember that place. And I remember being 5 years old, and as soon as you walked in, it was a little Christian bookstore and one little corner, and then everything else was all health food. And Dad had a health food store, and Dad really wanted to help people. He studied to be a doctor, my dad. He was very smart. And he said, you know, this thing is rigged. This thing is evil. They teach doctors based upon the evolutionary method that, you know, we're just a cesspool of chemicals that fell off a rock sometimes. So they make all these chemical concoctions and then throw it at you and try to fix you with chemicals. And Dad said, that's not right. No, God made us, and He made everything in nature. And the way to fix yourself is by natural means, by the things that God made. And so Dad was all into trying to help people with natural medicine. And he helped a lot of people. And a lot of folks from PBI came in there and talked to Dad and straightened him out on the King James, and a lot of stories I could go into there, but I remember that as a kid. And if you go to YouTube, go to thecloudchurch.org. On there I have my testimony written in salvation, my wife's written, and my dad's written testimony, and he talks about that bookstore and how he had all these books, and then he got Ruckman's tapes and realized, yeah, it's King James only. And then he said he looked at much of these books. He said, these are all garbage. And he threw half of them in the garbage because they weren't King James only. So my dad went out of business because, well, my dad had too kind of a heart. People would come in and my dad would give them stuff, or he would make them a sandwich, or he'd just give more away than he sold. And ultimately went out of business because he was just too kind of a person. And that's kind of sad. So anyway, still going along in Pensacola. Okay, here we are at a famous, I guess you could say, a famous road in Pensacola. And if you're from Pensacola, you know how to pronounce things a certain way. It's always interesting to me for someone to say something, and then we'll turn to it before the light changes, before we go. And so this right here is Texar Drive. Well, in Old Spanish, an X was a J sound. And of course, the Spaniards founded Pensacola. So that's called Texar Drive. And everybody that's from here says, oh, over on Texar. But you can always tell when someone's not from Pensacola. They'll be like, oh yeah, over on Texar Drive. On what? So it's kind of funny. There's a couple of roads like that are Old Spanish roads. And we still pronounce it the Old Spanish way because we're from here, but other people that are not don't. I find that so interesting. So that's Texar Drive. If you ever come to Pensacola, don't say Texar. That's Texar. We're down here on 9th Avenue, and we're starting to get more into downtown. So we're about to get into some of the older, prettier homes. There are a lot of them are that way, and I really want to go and show you some of the brick roads with all the old houses. But there's a couple of pretty old houses around here coming up. I think a lot of them have become, what do you call it, lawyers' places and things like that. But there's one coming up here on the left that I think is pretty interesting. And, well, it's farther up than I thought. Here's the Garden Center. It's kind of like a little convention center. What are they doing? Education series, whatever that is. There's the B'nai Israel Synagogue, the old Jewish synagogue. And a lot of these old buildings, see that? The attorneys take over and they use them for their businesses. Here's a pretty one, a pretty old house there. And then here's one. Look at the two lions out in the front. Do you see that? I think that is just the most beautiful home. That's incredible. All right, you can turn it off. Nothing to see here until we get to downtown. Another thing about Pensacola is there's quite a lot of homeless people, and it's very, very common to see them on the side of the road begging. This guy's sign says, any help for such and such. They're asking for money. And one time I saw a guy standing on the side of the road. He looked horrible. And his sign was so funny, it cracked me up. And he had a little cardboard sign, and he held it up, and it says, who's kidding who? I need a beer. Just like, well, at least he's being honest. I didn't give him any money. But I knew a guy one time who used to drive around in a pickup truck, and he'd put a shovel and a rake in the back just to have, because he'd always stop at a light and they'd come up and accost him and want money. He'd go, well, if you jump in the back of the truck, I'll take you to work and I'll pay you for a day's work. And the guy says, oh, no, and he backs away. He's calling their bluff. They want money. And a lot of these people probably do have a job or something like that. A lot of people found if you just come out and stand on the side of the road and ask for money, well, you can make $80, $90, $100 in one day. Why go work a job if you can do that? And it's just, there's a couple more on the other street corner. So it's kind of sad, and it's very hard to know who really is in need and who's doing this on purpose just to get something. And so that's why it's kind of hard to know, should we help this people? Because if we give them money, then what if they just go out and buy drugs, So, yeah. And I have a friend that, well, I like to give him gospel tracts, but I have a friend that he likes to give them socks. And so whenever he stops and they come up to him, he always has a bag of socks that he just bought at Walmart. He says, look, I want to give you these. He gives them a couple pairs of socks. And if they really are homeless, they're like, oh, man, I really need that. So I find that interesting. So here we're coming to downtown Pensacola. And there's a couple things here I want to show you. This is pretty cool. There's a lot of neat stuff about downtown Pensacola that I really like. So there's a lot to talk about here. Here we are coming under I-110, and a lot of your downtown Pensacola is all down this way. And like I said, it's a pretty poor place. And yet, even though it's so poor, there's lots of historical, beautiful architecture and things like that. So it's just the stoplights. I remember as a kid, there were like hardly any lights, and now going to Pensacola, you spend most of your time at a stoplight waiting. And this is Palafox Street, so we're going to take a left here to go to downtown. Over there is one of my favorite buildings. That beautiful, that's a lawyer's office, but I just find that like, you know, we get a mansion in heaven. I hope mine looks similar to that, because that's just, to me, just the most beautiful architecture, kind of a Italian style architecture. And there's going to be a lot of pretty houses up there. We'll come back and look at some of them. But over here, we're getting into the downtown area, and the first thing we come upon is this beautiful monument, which is to the Confederate dead. So this is our monument to those who fought in the Civil War, and that's that. There's a couple cannons. Now you're gonna have to do this quickly, Emma. Over on the right hand side, look at those pretty azaleas. This is where the old Spanish fort would have been, and this is all we have left to commemorate it. And there, and I like to get out sometimes and walk around there. Can you see that? That's to commemorate what was once the old Spanish position here, and the English came in and defeated the Spanish and took over. So this is downtown Pensacola ahead of us. And many of you know that I went to the Peter Ruckman's Bible School. Well, this is where Ruckman, when he was 27 years old, I guess he was here, and he was working on a radio station. He worked in radio. And so the building straight ahead of us in the distance, that's the old, is it the Blunt building? I forget the name of the building, but that's where the radio station was. And that's where Ruckman used to work. And Ruckman was looking for the Lord, and he was looking in, reading different things. And he went to this Catholic church, and he said, well, I wonder if Catholicism is the right place to go. And this is where Ruckman came to St. Michael's and was talking to the priest and stuff. And that's where he tells in his testimony the story of how the priest was smoking a cigar talking to him. And he goes, man, the guy looked like the devil to me and blowing smoke out. He's like, I don't think I want to be a Catholic. And he was telling him, Ruckman, you ought to go down to New Orleans and you ought to become a Jesuit. And Ruckman's like, there's something wrong with this. Yep, that's the Blunt building right in front of us. And so that would be where Ruckman worked, somewhere up in there. And that used to be at one time a radio station. Ruckman's testimony is that he got saved by planting seeds. One of the guys that came here was a guy named Hugh Pyle, and he used to preach in the radio, so that he would have witnessed to Ruckman in that building. But Ruckman said he went back this way, somewhere to one of these houses, and he looked in the window and he saw a Bible. And he broke the window and he broke in and he stole the Bible. He was looking for something. He was looking for the Lord, and he stole the Bible. What an awful thing. But he read it, and he read it. So I just, that's part of his testimony. Now this right here is the Masonic Building, which is awful. And the Masons everywhere. But this is downtown Pensacola, and I've always liked downtown Pensacola. It reminds me of a little New Orleans. And I've been to New Orleans a couple times, and I hate that place. The feeling that I get when I'm there, it just feels like Sodom and Gomorrah. But I do like the architecture, and I like about Pensacola is this beautiful architecture. It reminds me kind of a French and Spanish style. And so here we are, downtown Pensacola. A lot of memories here. We come here as a kid. They do their Mardi Gras here every year, which I don't like. That's a Catholic tradition. And can you see in the tree? The beads are there almost year round. They throw their beads and they get stuck up in the tree. They're still there. Could you see them? I think that's funny. And so I'm not a fan of Mardi Gras. I think it's an evil pagan tradition. But there's another homeless person. But I do think it's funny that anytime we come downtown, any time of the year, there's always these beads up in the trees. Interesting. Now, we used to come, all right, when you're in Bible school, it's mandatory that you preach on the street, that you learn how to do street preaching. So on Saturday, you either go in the afternoon and preach at a street corner and somewhere back that way in town, or you come in the evening. I don't know if they still do this, but they did when I was there, and you preach here in the park. And you go here and you preach in front of Seville Quarter. So downtown here, I have a lot of memories of preaching on the street and in the old park here. So let me get up to that park. Oh wow, that's new. Look at that painting on the side of the building of ships. That wasn't there last time we came. That's kind of cool. And like I say, I love downtown Pensacola because all the old architecture. You get this feeling of, oh, this is an old town. And I just think that's so neat. I don't like the world of beer though, but this is downtown. This is the old courthouse on the right, and if you look over, there's a couple cannons out in front right here. Do you see them? The two big cannons? I kind of think that's cool. And this building to the left is always creepy to me because it's got the face of a woman there. I just think that's so strange. But this on the left is I think it's Jackson Square, Jackson Park, if I remember right. And this is where we would meet and we'd pray. And then down there is Seville Quarter, which is a whole bunch of bars. And we would stand across the street and preach to the people in the bars. Sometimes we would stand on this corner, and there used to be a nudie bar right there, a strip bar. And I would preach there toward the strip bar. And one time a girl comes out, one of the strippers. She goes, "Hey, preacher!" And she raised her shirt up and showed me her you-know-what. And I'm like, oh, Lord, help. Oh, I don't want to see that. And thankfully, they closed that down, and they don't have that anymore. But this is Jackson's Steakhouse. It's a really good place. Back there, I don't want to drive, there's just so much, but back there is the T.T. Wentworth Museum. And a while back, it's been years now, when there was a King of Spain, I believe he abdicated, but the King of Spain came here to Pensacola. And my wife and I, we came out to hear him, and I took a Spanish Bible with me. And I was trying to give it to him, and I got right up to him, and his bodyguards turned me away. And I said, no, I want to give him a Bible. This would be the first time in like almost 500 years that someone gave a Bible to the King of Spain. And I want to do that. And they pushed me away and wouldn't let me do it. But I tried. I really tried. Now this to me is one of the coolest things. Can you see it? Do you see the horses? There's a little post with the little horse head on it. And that is from the old days when they would ride horses into town. There used to be a ring in the mouth of that horse. And that's where you'd put your reins of your horse. And those are still there. I just find, oh man, that's so cool. That's so cool. So here we're going, and straight ahead we've got this area that is now the modern day marina, and this is what they call Palafox Pier. Now when I was a kid, there was a convention center at the end of this, and this is where the gun shows were. And I remember my first gun show. I was 18 years old, and I came out here to the convention center, and that was fun times. Well, they've torn that down, and they built a little park out here, and this is where people come and do a lot of fishing. So here, and one time, you see this is where all the boats are. When Columbus came to America, he came with 3 boats, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Well, they've rebuilt those, and they take them around to different places and different ports so people can see what an exact replica of them was. And one day they had out here, I think it was the Santa Maria, and anybody was allowed to come out and look at it. And I got to see what that was like. Boy, was it a small ship. Now look here, when the King of Spain came, they donated this statue. And my wife and I, we drove around here, and the King of Spain was standing right there going, wow, this is neat. So we got real close to what was once the King of Spain and got to see him. Here's where a lot of people come and go fishing, right here. Remember the fishing convention I brought you to that one time? Had like 1,000 kids come out, and they gave them all a fishing pole and taught them how to fish. Across the way, over there, straight ahead, is Gulf Breeze. And back to the right is Pensacola Beach, and it eventually, Fort Pickens, and eventually goes out into the Gulf of Mexico. Now this is a fun place to come with Conrad because he chases these little doves, or not doves, but what are those, pigeons? Oh man, when we want him to take a nap, because he's tiring us out, because he's got more energy than an atomic bomb, we bring him out here and we're like, just chase a pigeon. And after about 20 minutes, he's like, falls asleep. Now over here, there's been several times that some ships have come, and they let you tour them. One time they brought the El Cano, and it was a ship from Spain, and it was an old sailing vessel, and we got to take a tour of it, and that was so much fun. Now I'm going to tell you something really cool too, here straight ahead. Here as a kid, I distinctly remember this. This is all new. A lot of this is just it's just too new. This was, when I was a kid, this was just an old nasty area. But all the ships would come in here, and you could come right here, and there was about 4 or 5 shrimping boats that have just come out and just caught shrimp. And check this out. I remember as a kid, they had shrimp that big, at least about 7-8 inches long, and they were like $4.99 a pound. Like one shrimp was almost a pound, and you could go right up there and buy it straight from the ship. And you don't do that anymore. But man, shrimp nowadays are tiny. But I remember seeing shrimp as a kid that were like huge. So this right here is where a lot of boats come in. And if you're ever in Pensacola, check this out. They have 2 ferries now, and you can buy a ticket. We thought about doing it, but boy, is it expensive. So we're like, no. But you can buy a ticket and have them take you out to Fort Pickens. And Fort Pickens is awesome. I highly recommend that you see Fort Pickens, but it gets hot in the summer. So if you're ever going to go out there and see Fort Pickens, do it in the spring or the fall or the winter. Don't come when it's 100 degrees outside, or you'll be sorry you did, because man, you sweat like a pig. But this is Pensacola. A lot of pretty stuff here. Like I said, it's old, but it's home. A lot of memories I have of this place. And just, you know, a lot of people, they're transplants here. Well, I'm born, raised here. So this is home. And I just, I don't know if I could move. I like it too much. I love Pensacola. People say, where did you get a word like Pensacola from? Well, they were the Pensacola Indians. And that's where it comes from the Pensacola Indians. Whoops. Over here is more of the downtown. And I want to show you this. Part of this is for me just to show you and to show my kids. But also, if you're watching this and you're ever planning on coming to Pensacola, this is kind of like, hey, this is where you need to go. Straight ahead is the old, well, actually, it's an exact replica of the old train station. And so that's what the old Pensacola train station would have looked like. Out to the right would have been all the docks where all the ships came in and put onto trains. And so here's the trains would be bringing everything in. So you ship it in on the boat, they put it on the train. Here's the train tracks. Right there in front of us, I don't know how old that building is, but that building is at least from the 1800s. That's an old warehouse. And here we are on Tarragona Street, which is a Spanish name, Tarragona. And so much historical Spanish. And what they did, here's Zaragoza Street. That's another Spanish name. Well, the Z in Spain is more like a TH. So Zaragoza, Zaragoza Street. And what they've done is they called this Historic Pensacola. They've taken a lot of the old buildings from here and they took them apart and they put them back here. And so this is a beautiful place to come and see old buildings. And it's so historic. See that old building? And a lot of them, they put out in front a little sticker of when this was originally built, this house. Look over here to the right. What does it say there? 1805, the what does it say? Trivoli High House. So that house was originally built in 1805. Now over here, check this out. This is an old style house. Back there, yep, someone's there. A lot of times you can come here during the week and they have someone in there who's a farrier, an iron worker, and they're making horseshoes or they're making knives, and you can see it. And it just gives you a feel of what it was like to live here in the old days, going back in time. Each house has a date. That one's built in does it say 85 or 65? This one's built in 1890 on the left. So this is, to me, this is awesome. Because I come here, I feel like I'm back in time. And you get this idea of what life would have been like in the old days. Here's the old church, Old Christchurch. This was built, I don't know, let me see if I can see a date. Because no one's behind me. The Old Christchurch, a lot of history here. And it says built in 1832. I don't know if that's the original 1832, if it's been rebuilt, but it does look pretty old, doesn't it? And that's the Old Christchurch. So Pensacola is beautiful. I like it. Like I said, it's old, but it's just the trees, the water's there, the history, the architecture, like that old house. I mean, that's really of a more modern house, but look how pretty it is. And I've always liked a house with a double-decker porch like that. I've always thought that's so cool to have an upper porch and a lower porch. No, we can't go to the right. We need to go left here. But this is Pensacola, and if you ever visit, well, then come and see it. Yeah, let me go left. Maybe we'll come back here and then go right. But here's Alcanis Street. So most of these streets still have names from when the Spanish were here. And look at the houses over on the right and everything. just gives you the feel of you're in an old town in the old South. And it's not, it's more of a Spanish feel. I mean, you go to a lot of old towns in the South and you feel like the English feel. Well, there was a lot of Spanish influence here, so. Oh, cool, check that out. That thing is full of oranges, isn't it? What a beautiful orange tree. Just full of oranges. So, that's Pensacola. And home. The First Baptist Church of Pensacola, there was a sign that says that was where the First Baptist Church of Pensacola was at one time, and it's since been torn down. Oh yeah, look where we are. This is cool that we get to come here. This is Seville Quarter. And if you're a lost person who loves to get drunk and you live in Pensacola, you probably know this place. This is where all the people come to get drunk in Pensacola. It's called Seville Quarter. And you know, like you have downtown, the French Quarter in New Orleans and places like this. So here's Seville Quarter. And we would stand on the left-hand side right here and we would preach across this way. We usually stand right underneath this little overhang. And they open this door, and your voice, when you preach the gospel, would go through this door and bounce into there. And I've heard people tell me later, you know, I could hear you way back in the back sitting down. I was trying to drink and music's playing and all I can hear is this dumb preacher. Hey, you're going to burn in hell if you don't get saved, you know. So right there is one of the places I preached, and it would go into that. So, yeah, this is Pensacola. There's the old TT Wentworth Museum. And so there's Pensacola. We kind of did a circle. So we'll turn it off here, and then I'll show you a little bit more as we go up farther up that way. All right, there's the bridge. They're actually rebuilding. That's the bridge to Gulf Breeze. And over here on the left, high on side, we've got a lot of pretty buildings that they kind of try to build in an old style with the pretty porches and everything. But straight ahead, we have the really rich people. Rich people can do whatever they want. Here in Pensacola, you're not allowed to build out over the water. But the rich people, I guess, somehow twisted the arms of the people in charge and said, can we build our rich houses over the water? And they let them actually build land out that wasn't even there. And they built their multi-million-dollar houses there on the right. You can't even see them because look at all the cat o' nine tail things sticking up. But look at those fancy houses out there. They built them on land that wasn't even there. That you and I, because we're poor, we can't go out there and fill in dirt and build our own house. But because they're rich, they can. Isn't that wild? If there's ever a hurricane in Pensacola, usually the weather people come out and they usually are like right in this area filming. And if you ever remember them talking about, oh, I'm in Pensacola and there's a hurricane, they're usually like right here. And that's in the background. Now, up here is a real cool little townhouse. All these different pastel colors and pretty. And always parked out front is the most beautiful Rolls Royce. And I wonder if it's there today. Yep, I think I see it. Next to the white Jeep, there's this old Rolls Royce. So whoever lives there owns that white Rolls Royce. And it's almost always parked there. I just find that kind of interesting. So there's a pretty cool place. Now here on the left is Saltgrass. That used to be Landry's. And that right there, I used to work there. And I actually had to work behind the bar as an oyster shucker. And that's all I did all day, shuck oysters. Yay, what fun, but that's what I did. Now I'm going to give you something here too. Okay. This was my custom with my buddy, who's now dead, unfortunately. And we'd go surfing all the time, and well, on the way to go surfing, we'd go across this bridge to go to Pensacola Beach. And I'm not going to go to Pensacola Beach, that's way over there. But when we come back from the beach, we come this way on Scenic Highway, and we had a custom. And I'll have to tell you what the custom is.
Roll the window down, Daddy.
Okay, so this is a bridge that the train goes over. And years and years ago, someone thought it'd be neat to come out here and put graffiti on it. And just like someone else put more. There's more paint on there than anything else. But the tradition that we had is we would all roll down our window, and as we go under, honk the horn. And that's so we'd sound like the train. And many times there'll be people on the sidewalk and we'd come under, we'd honk. We'd see them jump like this. They were so scared. They thought a train was coming. Oh, that was just too much fun. So that's our tradition, to go under the bridge. Now there's a guy, he came out here once for a whole year, and every day he'd take a picture of that bridge, because every day somebody comes out and paints something else over it. people started to put graffiti on the bridge, and at one time they tried to keep that from happening, and then the city just gave up. They're like, we can't stop people from painting on it. And this guy actually made a coffee table book of the bridge one day, every day for like a year. And every day was something different. Some people put on that bridge, breast cancer awareness, and they paint it pink. The next day somebody comes out and paints it green, and Happy Irish Day or whatever. It's just really weird. So that's an interesting thing. All right, we've turned around and I'm going north now, Balin Street. Look ahead at all the houses. Some of them are falling apart, but this is where we're going to get into some beautiful old style homes. And what I'd like to do is find Barcelona Street and turn up it, and there it is. In Old Spanish, it's Barcelona with the TH, Barcelona. But we say Barcelona, and look what we get. I just find this so beautiful. You get an all brick road. This must be 100, 200-year-old brick road that they never put asphalt on. Just to remind you what this city would have looked like. It would have all been brick at one time. And a lot of beautiful homes. That one used to actually be a bed and breakfast, someone told me, right there on the right. Look, they're redoing it. Oh, man. And a lot of pretty homes, but I think it's so neat. These old brick roads. There's so few of these left in America. And here we've got the old brick. It didn't last long, did it? Look, there's De Soto. He was a famous conquistador from Spain. But you got all these old homes from the late 1800s. What do you got? Victorian. You got Queen Anne. You've got different kinds. And this is where the uppity up people used to live. There's Gonzales Street. And just beautiful. Sometimes after church on Sunday, I like to just do a Sunday drive and just drive around and see some things. And there's a weird looking house. Look at that. It's kind of pretty though, isn't it? Wow. So now let's turn around and see if we can find any more old ones. I just find that kind of neat. Okay, we're up in what they call North Hill now. Okay, I guess we're heading west now in Pensacola, and here's the big old, what do you call that? Locomotive, train, Pride of Pensacola. And up here is where we are probably going to turn off on Barrancas Street. And I always thought that was like barracks or something like that in Spanish, but I looked it up in the dictionary in Spanish, and Barrancas means cliffs. And like I said, in Florida, there's here where we are, at least in Pensacola, there's lots of cliffs. And I wish I had time to take you to the Naval Air Station and take you and show you where the old Spanish fort would have been, and then show you the old French fort. And there's not enough time. You have to come to Pensacola yourself to see everything. But there's a lot to see, and there's some wonderful antique stores and antique shops, and lots to do here in Pensacola. So we're going to go look at a couple more things, and then we're going to call it quits. I think we might, you want to go there, I think we might go to Joe Patty's Seafood. And a lot of people, when they think of Pensacola, they think of Joe Patty's Seafood. So we're going to go there. So nope, we're not going to take Barrancas. It's farther up. We're gonna take this and go to Joe Patty's. Joe Patty's is fresh seafood right out of the Gulf. And the guy, Mr. Patty, is a Greek. So it kind of has a Greek theme to it. And some of you might remember I did a video on the Greek festival here in Pensacola, and that was kind of fun. So we'll go to Joe Patty's. And one of the things I like to do in Joe Patty's, they have all this seafood, and then they have this this little deli place, and they have all these different kind of cheeses from all over the world. And they have a cheese that's like $20 an ounce or something like that. It's just an outrageous price, and they give you free samples. So I was like, well, I'd like a free sample of the $20 cheese. And I tried it one time, and it was the weirdest. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. It was so strange. The first bite was just like, ooh, like the whole world just went, ooh, it was just like, yeah, this is the greatest thing I've ever had. And you're just like, this, and the flavor doesn't go away. It stays with you for like 30 minutes, and you're just like, this is some good cheese. But the moment you take the second bite, it's like your body goes, no more. And it's just the weird, I don't know who would purchase that cheese because it's only good for one bite. And the first bite is just like, yeah. The next bite is just like, don't ever eat me again. It's just the weirdest thing. And I don't know what kind of cheese or what. All I know is like, oh, thank you for the sample. And it was kind of neat to see. So that was kind of fun. So here we go to find Joe Patty's. So now we're heading to Joe Patty's, and we're kind of in the poor part of town. But there's the famous Joe Patty's. And this is Joe Patty's, and he's got the big old crawfish, and he's got the red snapper out there. And then we're going to turn in and just kind of check the place out and see what you think. I'm wondering if they'll let us tape inside. There's the ships. I mean, they literally go out daily, bring in more seafood, and they just go out of right here. So this is just a cool place to go. So we'll see if they'll let us record inside. So here we are at Joe Patty's, and isn't this cool? Imagine getting to go out every day right here and just go out and fish and come back and sell at your own store. Really cool. Look at oysters down there on the rocks. So let's head on in and see what we can see. All right, so to me this is a cool place. Let's go in and check it out. Look at all there is to see. All right, just about any kind of fish you want is here. Look, they're selling shark. Wow, catfish, redfish, triggerfish, tilapia, gulf grouper, amberjack. Doesn't that look good? Ooh, flounder. And it keeps going all the way down. So, neat place to go and get some fish. And this is what I like, free samples. Let's go check out the free samples. So, this is their, what do you call it? Deli stuff. And oh, let's see if we can find that expensive cheese. Here's a cheese that's $18.99 a pound. It says from over here. You have to look at it sideways. That's an expensive cheese. So yeah, and they let you try. What I like is different kinds of olives. There's so many kinds of olives, and they have such different flavors. Let's see what they've got over here. They should have some sort of dip here, and they don't. Want a piece of bread? Alright. So if you're ever in Pensacola, come on over to Joe Patty's. It's pretty cool. You get free samples, a lot of good food. It's not just fish, a little bit of everything. Lobster, anyone? Come around here and check this out. That is a big lobster right there. One thing I really like about this place is it's like a little mini museum with all these different pictures on the wall. Check this out. I don't know how old that is. I wonder if that's early 1900s, but look, an old sailing vessel, a snapper vessel. I just like seeing the old ships. Look at this, circa 1938. Wow. Kind of cool.
I wasn't even around then.
Look at this, 1925. Could you imagine?
Around then?
Right. Can you imagine how beautiful Pensacola must have been and back in the day with all these masts up in the air at all the different ship ports and everything. There's the ice house in 1940. It's just too cool. Alright, this one's kind of cool. It says the motley crew on the deck of the Guiding Star around 1957. Wow, the good old days. Wouldn't that be fun?
You want the free cake too?
Yeah, can she have one?
Yeah, chocolate or vanilla? Vanilla.
You say, this is my favorite part, right? That's what you're saying. This is my favorite part, the free sample. Free sample of gelato.
Thank you.
All right, can I get one? Chocolate?
It's only for kids.
I'm not a kid.
No, I'm
All
sorry.
right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, if only I was a child again. All right, well, you ready to go? So that's Joe Patty's. That was fun. Now it's time to get home.
43 right here.
Okay, well, I guess that almost concludes our tour of Pensacola. But I was like, oh yeah, look, the Wahoos Stadium. They have a baseball team in Pensacola, the Blue Wahoos. You say, what's a wahoo? It's a fish. And when you catch it, you go, wahoo, I got it. I guess, I don't know. I don't know where it got its name from. But out here, the Blue Wahoos Stadium is very beautiful. And it sits kind of right on the water. And it's fun to come out here sometimes. Kids love to come here and play in this park over here. I like the beautiful green grass. Look at the beautiful green grass over there, just how pretty that is on the right. Just that grass. Look, honey, push it over that way. A lot of pretty grass over here. And I don't know if they still have ball games. I've never been to a ball game here. I almost would like to go someday, but it's just like, you know, what for? You're not really into it. Oh, that grass, look. They keep that almost like a golf course. That's so pretty over there. But Pensacola, surrounded by water. And here's the beautiful view. Straight out ahead, you go through the pass, and then you end up into the Gulf of Mexico. So this is where we came, and they were giving away, every year they give away fishing poles to kids, and they have a fishing clinic, and they teach the kids how to fish. And we've gone once or twice, and it's kind of fun. Elise caught a crab. Did you catch anything?
No.
And the crab got off as soon as she brought it up. But yep, this is the Blue Wahoos Stadium. So there's just so much to see and do in Pensacola. It's just too much fun. Do you see the tiny house in front of us? The little white house? That is a Pensacola landmark. Some rich guy built the little house for his little, like, 2-year-old daughter. It's only big enough for like a 2 or 3-year-old to go in. It almost looks like a massive dollhouse. And for some reason, that's, you know what? I want to go stop and read it and find out more. I see they put out a plaque. Let's do that. Let's go see what it says about it. What do you say?
Okay.
So this plaque isn't for that, but you can kind of get a scale of how small that house is. And there's nothing here to tell you more about it. So, but this is cool. Look at this. Site of Panton, Leslie and Company's Indian trading post, established during the English occupation of 1763 to 1783, and burial place of Alexander McGilvery. So there was at one time a trading post here in the 1700s. That's pretty cool. And it was an Indian trading post. So that's pretty amazing. Lots of history in Pensacola. And what a weird little building, you know? Pretty building, but so little. Here's the Civic Center. I remember going there as a kid, seeing different things. Sometimes they take us on a field trip. We come over and see something. That's the old Civic Center. I can't remember what all I've seen in there, but I've been there before. I remember basketball. Oh, over on the right, there's the old cemetery. And one time, Laura and I, we walked around in there just for fun, because I like to see what's the oldest grave. And we literally found some from the 1700s, late 1700s, in Spanish still. Because remember, 1828 was when they got their independence from Spain. Or 1821, excuse me. And it was kind of neat to see that in Spanish. Now, up here on the left, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the most well-kept secrets of Pensacola. Did you know? Many people did not know this, but I am now convinced Elvis is still alive. Elvis is alive and well in Pensacola, and he likes to drive buses. And there's Elvis driving the bus. Hey, Elvis, how you doing, man? It's Elvis. Oh, they changed him up. Used to have him looking just like Elvis. Now they changed him into somebody else. But that's where Elvis used to be, and I think that's funny. And we'll end this. Well, no, we still got a little bit more to talk about on the way home. But there's a place here in Pensacola called McGuire's. It's an Irish pub, but it's also a restaurant. So, I'm not interested in going there and drinking, but they do have amazing food at McGuire's. And this is McGuire's. And if you like Irish stuff and Irish food, oh, the shepherd's pie is incredible there. and other things. And it's very interesting to me. All the women are dressed nicely and modestly and have beautiful long skirts on and plaid, and everything in there is just, it's like going to Ireland.
Except for the bathroom.
Yes, we don't talk about the bathrooms. The bathrooms are kind of creepy there. They have them mislabeled on purpose, kind of to scare you or something. It's weird. But there it is. That's McGuire's Irish Pub, and that's a kind of a neat place to go to eat. So yeah, so now we're going to get on I-110, take that to I-10, and then head on home because it's been a long day, has it not? And by the way, over here on the right is the train station. We saw downtown the old, rebuilt, old-time train station. This is the more modern train station, and it's now turned into a gigantic hotel, the Grand Hotel. But I just love the architecture on that place on the right. Isn't that beautiful? That's the older train, the old train station. My mom, down in one of those buildings down on the right there, she got her certification for scuba diving years ago. And now we're up above Pensacola on top of this, and you can kind of see a little bit of what the town's like, and some of the old houses. It's just is what it is. It was a great port for a lot of people because there's a deep water port, and the Spanish got here first, and they got it. And this is what it looks like 400 years later. The French really wanted this port, but they couldn't get it, so they kept going west, and they ended up with the Mobile in Mobile Bay. But that's a really shallow body of water, Mobile Bay. So really, if you think about it, this is a perfect place to settle. Perfect place. So I've said it before, but I went to the Pensacola Bible Institute in Pensacola, which is a Bible school to teach you the Bible. But there's actually two Bible schools or Bible universities or colleges or whatever you want to call them in Pensacola. And the other one is the bigger one, Pensacola Christian College. And I know the inside baseball, so to speak. I know how these both started. I find it's hilarious. So Peter Ruckman takes over the church here, the old Brent Baptist Church. Was it Brent or East Brent? I think it's the old Brent Baptist Church. And he pastored there, and the people that started PCC went to his church, and for some reason or another, they didn't want to be there, and Ruckman was starting his own Bible Institute. People show up and say, "Hey, Ruckman, I hear you're a Bible teacher. We're here to go to Bible school." He's like, "I don't have a Bible school. What are you talking about?" And eventually, he started a Bible school because so many people came and said, "We want to learn the Bible, Mr. Ruckman." And so in his church were the Hortons, and for some reason or another, they said, "You know what? We're going to go start our own Bible school," and they did, and that was Pensacola Christian College, and it's way, way, way bigger than Pensacola Bible Institute (PBI), and this is it on the left, and it is gigantic. And my wife's cousin, he went there for a year or so, and eventually became part of the staff and was working there for a while. And we have friends that are going over there, and sometimes we like to come over and spend time with them because they have a gigantic buffet in that place at the Four Winds. Look at the size of this place. It's a really, really big Christian college, and they claim to be King James only now. And my dad, he offered my sister, he offered to pay her to go there, and she didn't. I wish she had. So that's PCC. We have a joke here. It stands for Pensacola Christian College, but we say it stands for Pensacola Concentration Camp. And that's the joke, because they're very, very strict there. And that's good. That's good. A lot of the parents send their kids off to school. They don't want them, bad things to happen in schools like that. So it's a really good college for a lot of people who are Christians and want to go to a Christian college. So that's Pensacola Christian College. All right, well, we're heading home, and we're on the interstate, I-10, and we're getting close to being out of Pensacola. The way we know we're no longer in Pensacola is we're on the bridge over the bay. But always before we get to the bridge, I always remember this, because coming up on the right-hand side is a water tower. And you should be able to see it here in a second. Well, my mom always reminds me every time we go by here and tells me the story. And And I remember it. I was there. I was about 5, 6 years old. And we're driving, and in those days, you could be in the back seat and standing up with your hands on the front, and you didn't have to wear a seatbelt in the back seat. And I was like holding on to the seat, and we're driving, and we get to this part, and I said, "Oh look, there's the watermelon." I meant to say water tower, but it came out watermelon, and that's just kind of a joke to this day. Every time we drive by, it's, "Oh, look at the watermelon." So here it's coming up, the water tower. And I don't know if I thought it was kind of in the shape of a watermelon or if I just wasn't thinking, but it just came out wrong. Look at the watermelon, and there it is. Okay, here we are. This is the bridge across Escambia Bay, the 4-mile bridge, I think it is. And it's crazy how you can see. If you're looking straight ahead, it looks like, why does the bridge carve to the right? Why shouldn't it go straight? Well, it did. And when Hurricane Ivan came, Hurricane Ivan actually tore up this bridge. And so they had to tear it down and build to the right of the old one. So that's why this curves to the right so much. The old one actually went straight, but a lot of it was destroyed. So they had to rebuild I-10 here. And that's why it curves like that. I always thought, man, that's just a weird looking curve. And if you didn't know that, you'd probably be like, why is it curved like that? But that's the power of water, the power of a hurricane destroying it. So our house is over on the right. So over there somewhere on Escambia Bay, we live over that direction. We have a certain kind of tree here that tells you when it's going to rain. And what the tree does, it's kind of dark green on top leaf. But when it's going to rain, it kind of goes up like this, and it shows the bottom kind of grayish green of the leaf, and that's what it does right before it rains. So there's one right there as an example. I don't know if you can see it, but when you see that, it almost kind of looks kind of whitish, but it's more gray. Hey, guess what? We're gonna have some rain soon. And so that's kind of a neat thing, how God in nature gives you indicators that it's gonna rain soon. There's some over there too, and over there, and most of the time their leaves are down and they're just dark green, but you see that underside in that grayish kind of olive drab color. It's going to rain. In Oklahoma, my grandmother always used to say, it's going to rain when you see cows in the field sitting down. And I can't tell you how many times as a kid we drive by a field and there's some cows sitting down. And sure enough, within an hour or two, it rained. So it's just an interesting thing to be in connection with nature and to know things like that and to know. And they say it might rain today. We're seeing a lot of clouds coming together. So that's a good indicator to me that rain is on its way. So I think that's so interesting. I like things like that. They appeal to me. I like to read the Farmer's Almanac and things like that. So cool, huh? Up here on the left is where I saw an alligator not too long ago. See, out here we're kind of in a brackish water and all those reeds and everything. And it's very seldom that you see an alligator. They kind of hide way back there, away from people. But when you get a lot of rain, they start to come out. And one day we're driving through here, and right up on the left here we have a drainage retention area. I call it a drain. And in this drainage retention area, it got just so full of water that I looked over there one day and I said, is that what I think it is? And it was about a 4 or 5 foot long alligator swimming right in there. And he got in there through the fence. See the fence back there? I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but as you go up on the top here and look, you see the fence is kind of broken up. And he must have gotten in there. And that's where he was swimming around. So I've lived here most of my life. I've only seen an alligator 3 times. So you very seldom see them, but it is kind of fun when you do, so you know they're there. And they're around here somewhere. This right here is Mary Kitchens Road, they call it. They call it Mary Kitchens with an S Road. And in the old days, out here on Garcon Point, there was nobody. I mean, few people lived out here. There was nothing here. Matter of fact, there was no road to the end of the point. Behind our house, when I was growing up, there was a man named Buck Wiseman. And he told me stories of coming out here when he was young, in the 20s, 30s, 40s, or 30s, 40s. And he told stories about one night he woke up and he looked up in a tree and there's a big black panther staring down at him. It's kind of amazing. But all that really were out here were fishermen. Matter of fact, there used to be a little small fish packing company down on the end of of the peninsula. And so there was a woman that lived back there named Mary. And a lot of these fishermen, while they'd sell some fish, but then the rest of the fish they'd bring up here to Mary, and they'd ask her to cook it, and she would cook it in her kitchen. And they used to call this Mary's Kitchen Road, because they'd always go to Mary to get to her kitchen to have their fish cooked. And I learned, you learn stuff like this talking to the older people that lived around here. So they called it Mary's Kitchen, MARY' Kitchen, singular. But now it's called Mary Kitchens Road. It's just weird how things change. But it's kind of neat to know that this is what it really was, and this is why it's named after that. If you go up this way, there's a place called Mulat Road. And one guy told me, well, the reason it's called Mulat Road is because this old mulatto woman lived there. And so I thought, well, okay. But then I began to study more history and got in touch with other people and found other people, and that wasn't the truth. Even though it does sound like that, mulatto kind of sounds the same, short for mulatto. What is a mulatto? Someone who's half black, half white. And they used to have terms for that in the old days. But there used to be a ferry across the bay that we just came across, and the mule would pull the ferry. And they used to have ropes 4 miles across, and the mules would go 4 miles on land and pull the rope that way, and then and so you would take a ferry at the mule. And so they called that road Mule-at Road, because when you went there, that's where the mules are at. So to me, it's just, I love it. I love history. I love studying. I love looking at a sign of a name of a road and knowing why it's named that. I think that's so cool. And so that's just kind of an interesting story. I thought I'd throw that out. Maybe where you live, there's a lot of history, and you look at it every day, but you've never thought about it. Study it. Study history and learn. It's pretty amazing what you'll come up with. So I hope you enjoyed our trip to Pensacola, Florida, and our tour as I remembered it. I'm sure I left out a lot, but I appreciate you watching.